Troy, it's good to have you on today, man. Obviously, you're a friend of mine first, and you're also a filmmaker that I know, and you're also one of the hardest people that I know too. I mean, obviously, before this conversation, I know we can't get into it, but you were just talking about being interviewed for a Netflix show. It was your third Netflix show, not to mention you do other side work. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to have you on today, man. You're definitely someone I respect and whose film knowledge I definitely adhere to. But welcome to Film Digest, where basically we take a topic such as for today, what makes a movie a classic? And we stretch it out over three acts and just have a nice conversation about it. So, first, in Act One, man, to you, what makes a movie a classic? And what's your go-to classic movies?
Well, thank you for having me on for one. I appreciate the respect. It's always been nice to talk to you. To answer that first question, you said what makes a film a classic.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we can determine what makes a film a classic because it needs to be digested by masses in order for it to even have some type of aura with it to resonate within people that's watching it. So, for
Yeah.
example, if I make something, I can say, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a classic." It's not really up to me to decide that, but then
Yeah.
since with movies being so subjective, I think what makes them a classic is the time frame that they are made in. And in
Ooh.
school, they're giving us these key points about how pop culture helps influence them. So when you have certain pop cultural moments that's going on, and depending on what you when you make your movie, that itself will make it a classic depending on what pop culture moment you have it in. And you have high pop culture, lower pop culture, but lower pop culture is making its way up to high. And I just think that it's such a spectrum, right? That makes
Yes.
something classic. And I think when you ask people an opinion, what makes it a classic? Like a classic, I can think of anything with Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, labeled as a classic.
For
Now,
sure.
what's making them a classic? Is it the actors themselves that's making this a classic? Is it the
Mm.
story that made itself a classic? Was it the cinematography that made it a classic? Was it
Yeah.
the lighting that made it a classic? It's so many different things that go into it that I feel like it's hard for me to say what makes something a classic because so many people can put their opinion into it. And
Yes.
once you have a mass opinion, then you can have that conversation on what is considered a classic.
Wow, wow, man. First off, I'm really glad I asked you this question specifically. I can see the Spider-Man poster behind you, and I think
Uh,
we could agree that Spider-Man 1 is probably a classic. The Sam Raimi first Spider-Man,
oh,
Spider-Man 1.
definitely.
Not the
Definitely.
series as a whole, people got their own different opinions, but Spider-Man
Right.
1, right, could be considered and the time frame it was made in, that taking superhero movies to where they're at today. Right.
Exactly.
So I might come back to that, but I want to say from my own personal, I would say the story. If the
Hmm.
story is properly well told, I think the viewer may consider it a classic. I'll go with this movie. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but it's called The Descent. Came out in like 2005, I think 2006. It's about a group of cave divers. They get
Yep.
trapped in the cave.
Seen it.
Phenomenal movie. I personally think that
Mm,
movie's a classic. Like every time I watch it, I love it, but I love the story more so than anything and how
mm,
the director and the people made that project. I
mm,
love that aspect about it. I think it was well told from beginning to end. It had
mm,
symbolism in it. That is, but a lot of people may not necessarily refer to that movie or even know that about that movie, right?
mm.
But does that take away from it being a classic, or do you think it's just entirely subjective?
I think it's entirely subjective because
Mm,
something is a classic. It's kind of like when somebody says like, "Oh, this song is so fire." We have a whole bunch of people saying this song is so good. You can say by fact, okay, yeah, like Drake putting out his old albums, they'd be
yeah.
considered classics now, but they weren't classics when they came out originally. They were just something that
Mm,
was hot. And with Descendants, we have to look at it as a whole, right? Because we know they
yeah.
have more. So with them having more than one movie and then not hitting the same as the first one, it kind of
Yeah.
deteriorates from it being a classic. But I think I wouldn't label it as a classic. I think it's just more like it's one of your favorites to watch, something you enjoy.
I see
Because I
what
know
you're
people that
saying.
have it too. So it's like I think there's a difference between like, oh, this is a good movie that I like, and versus this is a good movie that the masses agree that, oh yeah, this is an all time amazing movie.
I feel you. I feel you. So do you think it has to be the entire project as a whole? Because let's look at Spider-Man, right? Going back to Spider-Man, let me get back to that now with the same rating as the first one.
Yep.
The second one and the third one, some people really don't like the third one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though technically that's a trilogy movie, but we still deem that as a classic. And I guess people would consider the second one a classic too, with Doc
Mm.
Ock for
Yep.
sure. Do you think it has to be do you think the timing of it and what it does is more important, or do you think the project as a whole has to be complete?
I think it's more about what does it help redefine when you put it out there.
Mm.
Regardless in that trilogy, if you have one that hits more than the other one, you have to look at the impact as a whole. Like a
Okay.
prime example, a big movie that people refer to today came out in 1920s, Casablanca.
Yeah,
That movie itself will always be a classic due to the
for
fact that
sure.
it led and pioneered to so many different things. Even
Mm.
in 2024, it can still be referenced back then because of the impact it had. And it also
Mm.
had the story element that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think as time goes on, it's just more about what can you do to make it everlasting. Like for example, Jordan Peele, his first movie,
Get
that
out.
is considered a classic because it's going to help pioneer multiple plethora of things that led to people like Ryan Coogler, all kinds of things. So it's really
Yeah.
about having that story for it to where it's enough where like people can inspire from it, and also having that impact, which also goes into the whole pop culture thing as well. Depending on what's going on in that time frame, depends on if it's going to be able to hit the same or reach out how it should. So like if something there's a wartime going on and you make a war movie, yeah, typically a lot of people are going to view that because at this time this is what's happening. Look at how many World War II movies we have in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
That even though it's not necessarily pop culture, but it's an historic moment or something very pinnacle that is going to help inspire other things.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you actually as a whole. I do think impact is vital. And I think any classic movie, whether we go to Boys in the Hood, we take it
Mm.
back to the 90s, or we take it back to the 80s and find a movie there, I think each movie that you listed has the impact factor first. I actually do 100% agree with you on that. Man, what's your go-to classic movie?
My go-to. So when you say go-to classic movie, you talking about classic and like what you gave like Descendants, or classic as in like something people would say it's like, oh yeah, this is that.
Something people would say this is that. And it's just the first movie that comes to mind when somebody says, man, what's a classic movie? Or man, what's a classic movie we could watch? Or something like that. What would be the first movies? It don't have to be one, two. It could be multiple.
Okay, bet.
Yeah, yeah.
Rush Hour 2.
I feel that. I
That
feel that. I feel
I
that.
like the times where they came out. They allowed them to have different type of jokes go off. The comedy impact and having the stunt choreography with Jackie Chan being done with it. It just sets the principle of what a movie can be. And
Yeah.
that was what they do back then. I feel like if they came back and was trying to redo that with the new modern stuff we had, it would still hit the same. Like if they kept the same energy and had new advancements that we got now, man, that movie
Yeah.
still pretty. It still holds up now.
No, it
You can
definitely
still watch.
does.
This is a good movie.
Yeah. And I think, especially for me, seeing the black drop top Chris Tucker had, it's the only reason why I want that car. The only reason why
Exactly.
I want that car. Like that in
Exactly.
itself is iconic. Also, too, obviously we're both black, so we can have this conversation. The ironic similarities between black and Chinese race as a whole. I think there's so many similarities between that, but them doing it in such a comedic trope,
Hmm.
it was all time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
if you put another two races and tried to build that same movie, I don't think you
Hmm.
could necessarily do that. You know what I'm
They
saying?
did try that not recently, but they did try that, and it. I ain't gonna say that because I ain't trying to bash somebody project, but it just didn't hit the same like it
Yeah,
was supposed to. So they definitely tried to replicate that. You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice.
yeah, yeah. And since we're on the topic, man, I'm curious, actress. I know you brought up Rush Hour 2, so clearly buddy cops is a big thing for you. There's another classic movie I think people would put in the buddy cop in Bad Boys. How do you feel like each one, if you had to pick one between the Rush Hour series and the Bad Boys, do you think Rush Hour is better than Bad Boys or vice versa? If you could only watch one of those, the other one had to be thrown away.
I'm going Rush Hour. I'm going Rush Hour. I think the Bad Boys franchise is phenomenal. However, it's just not something that I'm going to sit down and watch completely compared to it. Like they have their moments where I'm like, okay, I ain't really feeling that part, but like Rush Hour 1 and 2, no matter how many times I sit that, I can sit through it. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
take away that the Rush Hour franchise isn't good. It's just that it's not my go-to compared to Rush Hour.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Is it the comedy for you in Rush Hour? Like, why does Rush Hour come to mind for you like that?
I think it's just more the sense that it's a nostalgia thing. Like I watched that, I grew up watching that more than I grew up watching Bad Boys, even though I seen Bad Boys, but I don't know, Rush Hour just somehow hit resonated with me differently.
Mm,
And I I probably watched that movie like 5 times this year alone. Not that
Yeah.
much, but compared to when I used to watch it, so it's one of the things that just it's like a comfort film.
Yeah.
So it's like something I go back to and be like, man, I can sit through this again for real, and I'm gonna enjoy it from start to finish.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you. I have that same viewpoint when I watch it. For me though, that's not the first movie that comes to mind. For me, and this is hilarious because it shows the different
Mm,
filmmakers we really are and how we view films a certain way. For me, it's
mm,
always either The Dark Knight
mm.
or Goodfellas.
Those are both good. I remember you talking about the Dark Knight too.
Just,
Flash.
it's just a phenomenal. It's because of the film as a whole, from top to
Mm-hmm.
bottom, writing, direction, the writing and the direction of the story, and then obviously its place in the trilogy of movies and
Mm-hmm.
the acting in it. To me, is there's not many. I call them perfect movies. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
a perfect film. Like if you were trying to critique it, or it would be very hard for you to find flaws in it. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's why those two movies specifically come to mind. Obviously, of course, Boys in the Hood, a couple other movies, whether we go back to the 90s or keep it mid 2000s, maybe even Training Day, like other projects for sure, but specifically those two because I feel like the direction of it between Nolan and Scorsese, like
Mm-hmm.
almost perfect movies. Like you cannot find a way to critique it. It has just about every element in movies that you're looking for. And no matter how many times you see it, the film is stretched out in such a way where you can still be caught off guard by certain scenes. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Like it like certain things you thought may have been resolved or certain things you forgot in it you may recatch after you go through it. Specifically though, those two movies come to mind. But what I notice as we talk about these classic movies, usually we stay within the 90s realm or we stay within late 80s, or some people even take it back to the 20s and how you say Casablanca, or maybe early 2000s. And nowadays you see a lot of sequels or third installments of movies that were finished 20 or 30 years ago. Man, why do you
Mm-hmm.
think that is?
So this is a topic that I love to talk about. I talk to my friends about this topic all the time. And we
Yeah,
live in now where people are scared to create new IPs. So instead of creating new IPs, they use the aura from something else that they previously had and
yeah,
use that to try to produce something and get that hype behind it. Like look at Disney. How many
yeah,
times are we going to have a Lion King movie? Um,
yeah,
Disney
yeah,
as its
yeah,
whole,
yeah. No, I feel you.
like we could just
Yeah,
look, we could break down a lot of Disney in general,
yeah,
but I don't want to target them specifically. But we have to get to the point, and that's even spread into the game aspect too. Like there's games that keep doing the same thing, and
absolutely.
I think right now we need to, as filmmakers or even creatives as a whole, I think this is the perfect time to start coming up with our own stuff because now we live in a time where if you put something out, somebody might want to pick it up, or even if they don't want to pick it out, put it out there anyway because you have no idea. There's people like look at RDC. They
Yeah,
got stuff,
yeah,
skits and stuff they did that they didn't think was gonna come back out into fruition, and then boom, look at it now. They're like, man, that was an all time classic skit, and
yeah,
they're a comedy
yeah.
group. So it's
Right.
like that we need to, the filmmakers and creators, we need to start not being scared of taking some losses. Like the whole thing about losing is that it forge a path to success. You can't learn and move if you don't fail. So
For sure.
you got shows that's doing one season and then they being like, oh, let's tank it.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because you didn't get 50 million this time, you happen to get 35 million. Sometimes you just got to eat that loss.
yeah,
And if people are liking it, then give it a chance to actually bloom into something beautiful. We don't give stuff time, and I believe that that is based upon this whole brain rot thing.
yeah,
People
yeah,
do not like to sit and appreciate stuff for what it needs to be, and is they pushed it so much that people are like, "Man, we should get a second part to this movie." Sometimes stuff don't need a second. Sometimes stuff don't
yeah,
need a third. Sometimes we don't need to reinvigorate a franchise.
for sure.
Let the franchise. When you do that, you take away from its legacy of what it was. And then
Absolutely.
if you take something new and you mess it up, now you've jeopardized that entire legacy that you built and the foundation that it is on.
Yes, yes.
And we got to stop doing that because if not, how are we gonna get? We got all these different people that are probably amazing at film. Some of
Yeah,
them I see them on Instagram all the time. I see them
yeah,
on Twitter. How are they ever going to get to that point where they need to be at if we keep trying to get people to push the same stuff that's already been done? And then the bad part is they're trying to bring in the same people that were doing it before. So you're not even getting
yeah,
opportunity to the new people that's in the industry to even do anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel you. Or my current phrase I hear often is, man, they should have turned that movie into a TV series.
That
And
too.
it's like the 2 hours was enough. It didn't need eight full episodes to explain the story. I think you got it.
Exactly. And then every episode is an hour or 45 minutes to an hour now. So
Yeah,
it's like, listen. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, we're doing 5 seasons. 5 seasons?
man, man, man.
This
And then you
this
see so many of them fall off after season two or season three. But as to your point, there's great shows. Man, I was just talking to Flash about this. There was a show on Netflix. I'm not sure if you remember it. They don't even have it on Netflix anymore, but it was about a therapist. And she would put herself in the lives of her patients. Do you remember
mhm.
it?
No, I never watched
She
it.
would put herself in the lives of her patients to the point where she would get so ingrained, whether they were dealing with childhood trauma, she wouldn't get ingrained with their parents, or if they were criminals, she would get engaged, like literally engaged into criminal activity. But it was to the point where it was messing up her own family that she had when she was married. I think she had a husband, a couple of kids. It was to the point where it was messing up, and she was having to file or fit this dual personality she was starting to have, and it was starting to jeopardize her life. Either way, great show. I remember at the time they were coming out with season twos to a lot of different stuff, and I remember adamantly looking it up. Like, are you guys dropping a second one? Is you know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's something coming out, and they never went into it. My thing when you say the creators are scared, do you think there's a lack of creators?
Oh no, I don't think there will ever be a lack of creators because creators is
Mm,
what countries running. Without creatives, you wouldn't have the weapons you use. Without creatives, you wouldn't have logos, buildings, tools. Creatives are
mm.
always around. What I think it is that the people that hold the power are the people with the money. And when you come with a new idea that they don't feel confident in behind you, they'll
Yeah,
say, but then they'll put all the money into some bull crap. And then when it flops, they're like, oh, let's try again. Well, why
yeah,
not give somebody else an opportunity to try something to help alleviate it? If you've already taken losses, and I ain't gonna say no names, but we all know a franchise right now that typically keeps doubling back to try to do their own thing, even though
yeah,
there's already a company that's doing something with their character.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
I hope you say the name if you don't mind, or say an initial. Is it initials?
it start with an S.
Start with a S.
Start with an S.
Oh my
And with a
God.
Y.
I'm totally maybe it's because we're recording. I'm on the spot. I can't think about it. I can't
Oh,
think about it.
it's all good.
Yeah,
I just don't want to make it seem like I'm bashing them in case I ever get a chance to work with them. But
yeah, yeah,
they know that the recipes they got right now are not cooking.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, because I do get exactly what you mean when you say like it feels like if you're not a Scorsese already or a Spielberg or a Coogler or a Jordan Peele or some already established filmmaker who built their bones, they're not willing to give you the backing or the budget for your project. And this is where I was kind of talking to Flash a little bit, where it's like I feel like they're okay with backing something that's already been proven to work, but now it's gotten to the point where it's no longer attractive anymore, right? Where I feel like it's okay if you're gonna involve guns, drugs, money, like we're willing to put some sort of stake behind that. But if it involves something new or a new world that hasn't been built yet or hasn't been explored yet, I'm not okay with giving the necessary money to back that.
I agree, but then also disagree too, right?
Okay.
So sometimes, like when we, like for example, you just on the spot right now, right? You was like, oh, I can't think of what that is. I
Yeah,
think that's what happens because like sometimes we get so like a simple a simple random conversation can lead to your life changing like that, right?
for sure.
And I think of Jordan Peele specifically. I don't know if you watch him and Ryan Coogler's podcast. It's called Proximity Media, and they're
Haven't
going
yet.
over like, oh, if
I'm gonna check
anybody,
it
if you're a
out.
film, check out that episode, phenomenal. In there, Jordan Peele speaks about how it even came to him with his first movie, and
Mm,
basically wrote the script up, gave it to QC, and
yeah.
they were speaking about doing the movie. And then as he's almost done, when he goes, man, I think I'm the only one that can direct this. And all he did was ask. He asked, and they said yes, just like that. And I
Yeah.
think that sometimes when we're in the moment, we don't ask the right questions, right?
Ooh,
So it's like when you have this moment of opportunity, sometimes it can be overwhelming. But
yeah.
also you got that other side of it where it's like, man, if I don't ask the right question, this studio's not going to fund anything. And then
Mm,
let's say you do ask the right question and they do fund it. But then they're like, okay, yeah. People are like, man, this is good. This is good. Nah, we didn't make the exact amount of money. Bloop, goodbye. So it's
Yeah,
it's a 50-50. And I think there's not really a right way or a wrong way. You
yeah,
just gotta hope that the timing lines up with how you do it. That's
yeah,
all. Because look at Jordan Peele now. All he asked was a question. Hey, I think
yeah,
I'm the one to do this. Boom. There you go. To the moon.
yeah. I would agree. I would agree with him. I think he was the only one that can do that. And I also think too, going back to the point of today and what makes a classic movie, man. I also think it's the artist knowing what's best for the film
Mm-hmm.
and not willing to back down from that, right? We've seen Tarantino do that since he's came into the film industry in terms of saying those things of this movie has to go this way. If it doesn't, then I cannot be a part of it. Like, yeah, I'm willing to give you the script, but I can't necessarily be a part of it because it has to come out the way I see it. And then
Mm.
going back to your point of saying filmmakers being scared, do you think it's just to hear the word no? Or do you feel it's more so just not being necessarily in tune with the business of film?
I think it's an umbrella. I think it's more the sense like especially like if you be with being African American, right? The same
Yeah,
opportunity is not gonna come to you as it would to someone that is not African American. It's
yeah,
always said, and anybody that's black can attest to this.
for
You got to
sure,
put in up work to even get to that opportunity,
for sure.
and through that opportunity, no matter if you're a filmmaker or creative, you're gonna get told no. However, I'm not gonna sit here and say, "Oh, I'm not scared of no's." Nobody wants to hear that no, but you need to hear that no in order to better yourself. So
Yeah,
I feel like I don't think nobody is scared because if you have an idea, you'll be good. But I think what the problem might lie into, and I think I'm even guilty of it at times, is that I have the idea, but I don't have the I have a thought, but not the idea. That's a better way of wording it.
I see
My
what you
thought
mean.
would be, oh, I should do this movie, but I don't have the layout foundation of what it should be. So when I go present it, it's like for example, some people don't even know how to do a pitch. Some people don't know how to do a tagline. Some people don't know how to do a synopsis. Some people don't even know how to write scripts. Some people don't
Yeah,
understand the difference between an AV script and a spec script. It's
yeah,
certain vocabulary that you even need to have. Not in all cases, because there are some anomalies, but it typically, if you can't talk the language, you
yeah,
might not even get a chance to go through the door, even though if your skills are subpar. You gotta have the knowledge. Just people that don't even have a portfolio, but they thinking they can go talk to this company and somehow get a movie out there. Why
yeah,
would they? So it's not
yeah.
necessarily. I think people are scared. I just think that we got to do some little bit more foundation. I think we have
Actually
the
take time to build out the thought that you have.
yeah. Don't
I
let it
feel
just be a
that.
quick idea and let me run off and like people gonna tell you, if you got an idea, go with it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come down to okay, you have this idea. How can this happen? Do you know what safety regulations you need to fall into? Like if you understand
Can we go
every
back real quick to that portfolio comment that you just made, though? Because I think
yeah,
that's really, really crucial, man. I know you've said this before. I had you on another show, and what's your
mm,
story? And by the way, I don't know if I told you this at the beginning. You're also a great, great storyteller, man, too, as well. But I know we
thank you.
talked about this then having that portfolio, but the only way to have a portfolio is to actually build out a portportfolio, which means
Yeah,
actually doing things like applying the work,
yep.
making the script. Do you feel like in going and it's kind of steering into that, are there a lack of creators more so, but in that fear, is it also I don't want to fail at the idea I have is really big and it'll take a lot of
Hmm.
money. And that's the only idea.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to try and work with what I have, the tools I currently have to actually help me build a portfolio. So maybe I could make that project or that dream project that I
Yeah.
have. How do you feel
So
about that?
So I feel highly about that. One of the crucial things that Full Sail was they had us in this class called career readiness, and we had this last portfolio class, and it's about setting yourself up to be presentable in the matter, right? And
Hmm.
people be like people come to me all the time, like, man, I got this idea and all this, and I'm like, okay. They be like, how do I do this? I'm like, okay, well, where's your portfolio? Have you broken down the avenues you can go into? And when it comes to your portfolio specifically, you do
Yeah.
not need to have a big idea to have a portfolio. My
Mm.
portfolio consists of work that I've done prior last year and stuff I've done this year. And I'm proud of my portfolio for what it is. But I wouldn't and school played a key part in that. And I know people look down on college and all of this stuff, but listen to me.
Yeah.
Go to film school. And before you say, oh, I can do this without film school and all this, that is true. However,
You
if
need the
you go
money.
there, you learn the fundamentals about it. If you have certain colleges and you get cool with certain people, you can have that backing. When you graduate from Full Sail, they give you a website where you can apply to jobs directly in your field, but you need to have a portfolio, and the school helps you build that portfolio. So instead
Mm,
of you trying to be like, man, I should put this and this, doesn't mean that your portfolio is good. Do you understand what it means to even have a good portfolio? Do you understand, like, even on our resumes and filmmaking is completely different than the resume you would have if you turned it into a 9 to 5. The
yeah,
format of it is different.
yeah,
And I tell people this: if you have an idea for something, shoot some smaller things, maybe come back to it. I have ideas that I've had for years and I have not done them yet. But
yeah,
I've done plenty of things. I've done free work. I've
yeah,
went to
yeah,
help people do marketing and advertising. I put myself in situations that ideally nobody would want, but I
yeah,
needed to put myself there in order to build that portfolio. Also, on your portfolio, nobody's going to even look at your resume if you don't even have a link to your portfolio on there. Your
yeah,
portfolio, and on that portfolio, you need to have a demo reel. You will also recommend, as a filmmaker, you need to have a video resume, and the video resume is typically, it's an introduction video. It's not about what I can do. It's about who I am and what I've done. Your demo reel is, this is my best work. Your portfolio is, this is some of the best work that I have done outside of the demo reel. You
hmm,
want to give people the opportunity to understand who you are as a filmmaker, what you've done, what you can do, and the other skills that you possess at that time as well. It's
yeah,
forever changing, but you cannot get nowhere if you do not have no portfolio. Let's imagine it. Imagine this, right? Let's
yeah,
say if you like, I'm about to go to this barber and they brand new, right? They ain't got no
hmm,
pictures of nobody that didn't cut.
yeah,
Somebody might give it a chance, but for the most part, if somebody's been getting their hair cut for a long time, you're not gonna just go up and jump to a barber that doesn't have any proof of what they can do.
for
Same
sure.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I completely feel you. You don't know what I respect a lot about what you said, man, is getting the education to put
Mhm.
yourself in the best seat possible to move forward within the industry. I do think that, and I love how this all really ties into classic movies and what goes into making a classic movie as we talk about the creators. I feel there's also a lack of, even in some of the movies I've recently seen that's been put out in theaters or on
Mhm.
Netflix or whatever, or not just Netflix, but Hulu, Stars,
Right.
whoever, whatever streaming services. Sometimes I've noticed, I feel like there's been such a lack of completion of ideas that we're
Mm.
starting to accept mediocrity as great films. Am I crazy to think that?
Nope, you are 100% correct, because it goes back to that topic we were just talking about. These people that hold the power with the money.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't even put their movie out. Sam Raimi, for example, Spider-Man 3, they Sony stepped in. He's even admitted to that movie did not come out how he intended it to come out. That's why it was so big when he came back for what did he come back for? I'm sorry, he came back for Doctor Strange, right?
Hmm.
So it's not even necessarily that mediocrity is okay. It's the fact that I think the people that hold the power are okay with mediocrity. And they know
Hmm.
they're going to make their money because there's really nothing else there. And that's why I be telling people, like, this is the key time to bring your own ideas into fruition right now, because they
Yeah.
might the money off rip anyway.
With these last 2 minutes, let's talk about getting those ideas out because now we have platforms and even before Tubi, there was always YouTube. But I do
Hmm.
want to focus specifically on those two, YouTube and Tubi, man. How do you feel about the independent market? Do you feel like there are independent filmmakers who are putting themselves out there, making classics on these independent platforms like Tubi or
Oh yeah,
YouTube?
absolutely. I believe that they are doing that, but I also feel like too it is saturated with people that didn't get the fundamental learnings from it either. And
Mm,
and the reason I say that is because there's a reason why at certain times I think Tubi reputation has gotten better. Not to say that Tubi itself is the fault for this, but so many people were just putting whatever they wanted out on Tubi. Like Tubi has even upgraded the standards where I believe the camera. I think you have to use the camera. I think you have to have a Sony FX6 to even produce a movie for Tubi now. So
yeah.
they went through certain things, but we got to get from the fact that just because you got a camera don't mean that you can do something good. Like people be like, oh man, that camera looks so clean when you did this. No, I made that camera look clean for this shot. I set all
Yeah.
this up to look this good. The camera just does what I'm telling it to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's in that key aspect that, like, there's a lot of people out there, but I think it's a lot of people that didn't go the correct route. Like, people made fun of me all the time. Why are you going to film school and all of this? Some of the biggest names went to film school: Ryan Coogler,
Yeah.
Jordan Peele,
Rush
and there's
Hour 2. Yeah. Yeah.
two African Americans are some of the biggest directors and story writers. So don't
Yeah.
sit here and talk to me and say that I'm sure there's more. I just named them two because they're two of my favorites.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
we have to have some type of formation. It can't just be I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to do this. You need to have the foundation to your house. Stop trying to
yeah,
build a house with no foundation.
yeah. Because without it, you and to that point, even as we talk about Tubi movies, if you have the money, relatively speaking, you can make a project. It does not necessarily mean it will be the best project, but you
Mm,
can make a project, which you wouldn't need film school for or any whatever,
mm,
but you don't have the education behind, and there's so many people that don't, that you're saturating a market filled
mm,
with people who don't have that background that you're talking about.
yeah,
I do think I actually really do think film school is important. Or if not film school, at least having getting the knowledge through working for free, working
mm,
under people for free,
hmm,
working around people who know what they're doing for free, and not being so bashful or angry that you have to work for free to
yeah.
figure out that knowledge or to have
Hmm.
that background. But yeah,
I
man,
agree.
was there any other last thoughts you had on that? Tubi, classic movies, YouTube
Um,
streaming?
yeah, I would just say when it comes to streaming anything that you have, anything that you want to put into it, believe in yourself. Even if you like, man, this did not come out well, believe in yourself. Everything that you put out is not going to be good. And what you think could be your best work, people might say is your trash work. And what you think is your trash work might be considered to be your best work. But at the end of the day, believe in yourself because if you do not believe in yourself, the next person that you're trying to inspire will not believe in you.
Mm, mm. I like that, man. Dude, Troy, it was great having you on today, man. I know you got somewhere to be, and hopefully it's for episode 3
Oh, definitely,
with
definitely.
Flash.
Always a pleasure.
But anyway, man, I had to have you on, man. It was great talking to you, bro, as always.
It was good talking to you too, brother.